This video is a terrible idea because this video is for me and nobody else. This one isn't about views, this is about my sanity. I don't even know what the background footage on this video will be as I record this, but I hope you do enjoy it. The Bruins season is over. Obviously, if you look at my channel, you'll see that I attempted to do a full season recap, and as much as I'd like to say that I stopped doing those videos because I knew this was going to happen, that's not the case. In reality, it was just a time management thing for me, but honestly, I had a small glimmer of hope. Despite most of the videos featuring me pointing out the same errors game in and game out, it still seemed impossible that this would happen again. Especially considering this team boasted the league's best power play for a good portion of the season, especially for this team, a Bruins team that had 3 30-goal scorers for the first time since the 02-03 season. That season, where Glenn Murray, perhaps the most underrated Bruin of all time, hit the 44-goal marker, former captain Joe Thornton chipped in 36, and Mike fucking Knuble had 30 goals. But yes, it was a different time, and the game has changed a lot between then. The game's changed a lot between the last time the Bruins missed back-to-back postseasons, about a decade ago. The Bruins have had very talented players on their roster in this time span, but it's amazing to see that Marchand, Bergeron, and Eriksson have had the success that they did this season. Bergeron, obviously, is the heart and soul of this team. Brad Marchand, honestly, he should be disappointed in himself that he didn't hit 40. He honestly should have, but dry spells and that suspension took that milestone away. And Louis Eriksson, he wasn't traded, but he continued to do his job. All 3 of these guys tried, and they were the only team to match the unreal Dallas Stars with 3 30-goal scorers. That wasn't enough. Dallas is in the playoffs. Boston is not. We'll get back to the roster in a bit because the main talking point, and really the main talking points, they really need to be about management. I respect Cam Neely to death for what he did as a player, but it's time to take Old Yeller behind the barn and move on. He's forever tainted due to being under Chiarelli's learning tree as an executive, and that is an irreversible problem. And Oilers fans, I'll say this about Peter Chiarelli, I hope it works out for you. I really do. And I know how a cup can make you forget about a lot of down years, and obviously I don't need to say you guys have had a lot of down years, but a cup run, a cup winning team under Peter Chiarelli, those down years will return sooner rather than later. I can only hope for your sake that there is a Stanley Cup in his era under his tenure to ease that pain. Don Sweeney, I wanted to give him a chance, but he's learning from the guy who learned from Peter Chiarelli. He simply never stood a chance. Not to say he's going anywhere, but with every good or even decent trade, you look at Lucic, Martin Jones, there's a Zach Ronaldo, a Dougie Hamilton, a John Michael Liles, to even it up, not to say that Liles was terrible either. This team will never succeed with Cam Neely and Don Sweeney at the helm, and that hurts to say. Truly, I will forever respect them for their contributions on the ice, but in the front office, not everyone can make that transition. And the longer they're here, the closer they come to being Exhibit A and Exhibit B of that statement when it comes to players transitioning to a front office role. More importantly, do I think either of them will go anywhere? No. They claim to have a 3-year plan, so they'll get 3 years. Year 1, no better than what Peter Chiarelli did in his final year. But people will say, oh, well, Don has to, deal with the mess and clean up what Chiarelli left behind. And yes, that's true. I said that myself. But along the way, it's been 1 step forward, 2 steps back. He has made plenty of his own mistakes, and this is just year 1. So if they're not going anywhere, guess who is? After all, we need a scapegoat. This is professional sports, after all. And that man is the winningest coach in Bruins history, and it's not even his goddamn fault in the slightest. Claude Julien is the greatest coach this team has ever seen. Now, if you view that as a bad thing, I don't know if I necessarily blame you, but the point remains. The mistakes that were made on ice cannot be pinned to Claude Julien. However, they will be. Every player in that locker room during the final stretch claims that they knew what needed to be done. You heard it on the NESN broadcast every goddamn time. Quote, "We just had to focus on the system and we're good." Hell, look at what Matt Bolesky did on Twitter after the game. That solidifies that statement. So for there to be any talk of Claude Julien losing the locker room is just pure garbage. It's just absolute garbage. And besides, if you needed any evidence that the Bruins aren't very good actors and were just lying, look at the lack of power plays this season. This team can't act to save their goddamn lives. They could not pull off a lie of this magnitude. People can talk about, oh, maybe he isn't a good fit for this team anymore. What coach is? What direction is this team going in anyway? They have no direction whatsoever. Yes, Claude Julien plays a simple system, defense first, but if you want to go a more offensive route, especially with some of the prospects you have, like Vetrano, like Zarnik, Kokochev, Seth Griffith, David Pasternak, that's fine. But then how the hell do you explain the Ronaldo move? How do you explain certain moves that completely contradict that statement of them wanting to go with the more offensive coach? If you wanted to fire Claude Julien and go that direction, I get that. But that's not the message that we're getting. That's not the fucking garbage that the media is putting out. It's not, oh, Claude just isn't a good fit anymore. No, it's that Claude's a terrible coach and he's not a good fit anymore. Most people will give him some props, but still, not enough as for what he deserves. Simply put, this team has no direction and you know exactly what you're getting with Claude Julien as head coach. But what the hell is he supposed to do with these mixed signals on where this team is going and what type of style will best fit these players? It's an absolute joke. The bottom line is management and coach, they're supposed to get along. They're supposed to have the same vision. Claude Julien is a defensive coach. If the prospects don't match, if players you're acquiring don't match, that is on management, because the bottom line is it's up to management what players are on the team, what coach you have. The past 2 seasons have been complete failures, and that lies solely on management's shoulders. But aside from Cam, who was there to oversee it all? You can't blame Don for last year, so Claude it is. And it will be the single biggest mistake this franchise has made in a very long time. And we're talking about a franchise that traded Tyler Seguin, a franchise that traded Phil Kessel, Joe Thornton, and just bottom line, you thought hiring Don Sweeney in the first place was bad. Just wait for this, especially if this happens. And well, let's be honest, I'll never be done. I'm addicted to being a Bruins fan, so I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, if this happens, I'll be done. Being a Bruins fan is a part of who I am. Some people make fun of sports fans for that, for caring so much about the success of other people. But certain bonds that I share with people in my life, hockey's a big part of that. It's why sports fans are sports fans. But getting back on track, or way off track perhaps, if we're talking about the Bruins, if CJ's fired, there are options. Now, I'd love for it to be someone experienced who should be in the NHL, like Guy Boucher. That's not happening. He's a shoo-in for Montreal if that spot becomes available. But man, Montreal has their own issues. Don't worry, buddy, I feel your pain. Jeff Ward, a former assistant coach for the Bruins. And let's be honest, with respect to Joe Sacco, Jeff Ward was a general behind that bench. He left for the DEL. He's back in the NHL with New Jersey. And I pray that if we get a new coach, that it's him. Or hell, even a coach from the NCAA. Because, of course, look at Jeff Blashill in Detroit, Dave Haxtell in Philly. You know, the 2 rookie coaches whose teams just beat out the Bruins. Fucking get Jerry York. Somebody. But enough beating around the bush. Mike Milbury. All problems right now with the Bruins are manageable. Every problem you can repair. They are repairable problems. But if you hire Mike Milbury, that is the equivalent of irreversible brain damage, and you might as well pull the plug. I'd hate to imagine what this team will look like next year, especially without Claude. People love to mock the systems comment as well, but just look at the team. It's a very simple course of action. Defense first, with responsible plays, smooth breakout passes, nice quick transitions. If you can't have players who can just simply get that done, how the hell is that your fault as a coach? It's embarrassing that a large portion of this team can't get that done. It's as basic of a system as you can get that you're essentially first taught when you enter the world of hockey. I mean, hell, if it's on Claude, I mean, I'm not defending Claude. We all know, like, he has an issue with the younger guys. He prefers players who are flat out ready to go now, which is why Ryan Spooner, this is essentially his breakout season, and even then, we still see his defensive issues. Just what can you even say at this point? And the worst thing is, I mean, it's not even that, it's everything. Look at the Sens game. You score the first goal. If you've watched an episode of my recaps, just one, you know what I'm gonna say next. They go up 1-0, and then what? They try to coast. They are so mentally weak that it's clearly visible on their faces throughout the game. That's the only thought going through their minds are, God, please don't let me screw this up. I've never seen a group of professionals in any sport with less confidence in their own ability. It's absolutely absurd. How can you go from the Detroit game absolutely getting the job done, picture perfect, a true team effort that fans can be proud of, to doing literally 180 degrees the exact opposite 2 days later? It's embarrassing. Just look at the month of April. A huge win against St. Louis, followed up 2 days later by going down 6-0 to Chicago, and people will say, oh, but they showed heart by scoring 4 goals and getting back into it. That's not heart. That's playing so that you don't get stabbed once the plane lands back in Boston. And then you follow that up by losing to Carolina in overtime again. Seriously, again. Second time in a month. And fucking Noah Hannafin, you know, the guy you really should have traded up to get, especially after losing Dougie. You know, respect to DeBrusk, Zaboral, and Senyshyn, whatever. I hope, and I have hope, that they'll all be NHL caliber players one day, but just Jesus Christ, is that not perfect irony? That just Hannafin, just so fitting that Noah Hannafin gets that win. And I mean, just look at the games this season. Calgary scoring with, 5 seconds left and winning in overtime. The horrendous California trip last month. A 6-4 loss to the Blue Jackets in February, the 9-2 loss to LA on home ice, the Winter Classic, losses to Washington, Philly, New York in early January, and I want to say I can't believe this is happening again, but then you remember the Devils game, outshooting them 40-15 and losing 2-1, and it wasn't even against Corey Schneider, it was against Keith Kincaid. 1 goal on 40 shots against a bubble goaltender. But who is that game going to be pinned on? Is that going to be pinned on the forwards for their lack of finish? No, it isn't, which brings me to scapegoat number 2, and you all know who it is, Tuukka Rask. Now, I understand the media's role. Being controversial brings in viewers. Being loud and obnoxious brings in viewers. That holds true everywhere. Look on TV, look on YouTube. Getting people angry, just being loud and obnoxious in general, helps you make money. But I just can't understand the obsession with trying to break Rask's spirit and just to convince the world that he's not that good of a fucking goalie. And obviously it started between 2009 and 2011. 2009, the Bruins blow a series to the Carolina Hurricanes. The goalie was Tim Thomas. 2010, the Bruins blow a series, 3-0 series lead against Philly, as we all know. The goalie, Tuukka Rask. Both goalies, you know, you could blame them if you want to. I personally blame the skaters in front of them, but you could blame both goalies. 2011, though, is where that changes, as Tim Thomas has the greatest postseason in history to steal a cup for the Bruins, and suddenly Rask is the ultimate scapegoat. Was it Thomas's fault in 2009? No. But ever since Thomas won a cup and left this team high and dry, Rask has had the most unrealistic expectations that just simply put no goalie could ever live up to. Marty Brodeur, Patrick Waugh, the media would be ripping them a fucking new one. And it's just not right. Rask obviously isn't perfect, no goalie is, but anytime this team fails, even if it's just beyond obvious who should shoulder the blame, it's always directed at Rask. And I guess that comes with the territory of being a goaltender, but it's garbage. It's just garbage. And him being sick today and people questioning his heart, you know, I'm trying to hold back on the swearing in this one, guys, but fuck you. If you are one of those people who are questioning the heart of Tuukka Rask with the fucking vagina jokes and the, oh, he had a tummy ache, boo-hoo, you are a miserable prick. This is why we can't have nice things. This is why Boston sports fans get a negative reputation. And I don't like lumping everybody together. Every fan base has its assholes. But Bruins fans, New England sports fans have been spoiled rotten for the last 15 years, and the lovable losers turned kings don't know how to handle that newfound success. Yes, Tom Brady is God himself. The Red Sox have won 3 titles in my lifetime, when my grandfather, who loved the team his entire life, never got to see them win shit. And yes, the Celtics proved that anything is possible. But how does this fan base handle success? By suddenly having the most unrealistic of standards that no human being can uphold. Tuukka Rask is a top 5 goalie in this league, period. You can have an argument if you want for top 10, and I'll probably struggle to disagree with you, but the bottom line is he has bailed out this team more times than I can possibly count over the past few years. Look at 2013. Do you think the Bruins make the finals? Honestly, do you think the Bruins make the finals if we have another goalie in net? Not a goddamn chance. 17 seconds. Boy, people love to pin that on Tuukka. I'm sure it has nothing to do though with the players in front of him who were already envisioning being on a plane heading back to Chicago for Game 7, just imagining it was 2011 all over again. Last year, we're in the goddamn McDavid sweepstakes if it's not for Tuukka, and this year, bring on Austin Matthews, because that's exactly where we'd be if it was not for Tuukka Rask. And yes, I know the first half of this season was pretty goddamn rough, but hey, look at the team in front of him. Pretty goddamn rough too, don't you think? And hell, maybe that's where I'd rather be. I'd much rather be a high lottery pick than watching this team crumble again, because it's pure torture. To fail this miserably, and again, it has to do with the high expectations, even though myself, I had a feeling we were missing the playoffs anyway. Of course I did. I didn't even put the Bruins, as far as I remember. Someone go back if you want. I put out a preview video. Pretty sure I didn't have the Bruins in the playoffs in that video. But give me Austin Matthews, give me Patrick Lane, Jacob Chychrun, Matthew Tkachuk, Jesse Puljujarvi, who it would be amazing to hear Jack Edwards try to pronounce his name. Give me any of those players any day of the week over this shit. I'm not turning on my own fan base, but maybe New England deserves to be smacked back down to reality, and it would be for our own good. To sum this up, Rask and Claude Julien will be, and already are, the scapegoats for this team. And simply put, it's going to get worse before it gets better. This offseason is a massive chance to right the ship. But honestly, who has confidence in that? This draft looks somewhat promising with 2 first-round picks, and thankfully we have the Islanders second. After all, we traded our own for Brett Connolly. 2 goddamn seconds for the reincarnation of Danny Paille, with respect to Paille, but my frickin' god, how nice would it have been to have Johnny Boychuk this season? Guys, I'm out of steam. I mean, my god, if there's anybody still listening to this, I apologize, but had to get it off my chest so I can just move on, enjoy the playoffs. What more can be said about this team anyway, other than more punishment and misery awaits the fans for hopefully only the next few years. At the very least, I mean, this offseason is going to continue the pain, the draft, free agency. I'm sure it's all going to be miserable. And to the idiots who think we're getting Jimmy Vesey, Danton Heinen, or somehow Thatcher Demko, have fun with that thought, buddy. But so long 2015-16 and all the wasted potential that came along with you.